Well, good evening, everybody. First of all, let's start with trivia. In the diaspora, this week's Torah portion is Chukat and Balak combined. In the land of Israel this week, it's only Balak.
Numbers 19.
Numbers chapter 19 is where we're going to start. That's in the diaspora, the rest of the world. But in the land of Israel, they've been page 152, 153 in the Gutnick Chumash. In the land of Israel, they've been one Torah portion ahead of us since Shavuot. Because Shavuot this year was Friday and Shabbat. In Israel, they only had one day Shavuot, so Shabbat was not Chag for them. For us, that second day of Shavuot, we read a special Torah reading for the holiday on the second day. They read a regular Torah portion, which was Parshat Naso. So they've been ahead of us by one Torah portion for the last 4 or 5 weeks or so. So last week, they were one ahead of us, but they only read Chukat when we read Korach. This week, they will only read Balak, but we'll read both Chukat and Balak. And then we'll be even. So next week will be Pinchas, and we'll all be on the same page. L'chaim. By the way, if you ever want to try some of the best juice in town, you should stop by. Green juice. Now, and the reason for that is,
Which you don't need to eat.
the reason why the Chukas Balak are combined, what did you say?
So which you don't need to eat.
All right.
Okay, never mind.
What's in it? All very super healthy stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we make it here.
All right.
Organic kale, cilantro, ginger, turmeric, cucumber. If you really want to know what's in it, you have to ask my wife. I don't really know. Anyway, okay. So next week we'll talk a little bit about this whole thing because I actually looked up try to find the reason why we catch up this week, Chukat Balak. Because in other years we catch up Matos Maseh. In other words, even though this would be the first opportunity to catch up, we don't actually catch up till Matos Maseh, some years.
And this was all set up for us 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, and never fails.
It's unbelievable.
And it never fails. It works every time.
So they knew the calendar for 2,000 whatever years.
Yes.
How far does it go?
And they did it with a pencil.
And it goes up to 6,000?
6,000, yeah. And they did that with a pencil. With a pencil.
After 6,000 years it stops?
I'm not sure what happens after 6,000, but
Yeah, but they did up to 6,000.
they calculate till 6,000. With a pencil. It's kind of crazy. It really is. It's not human. It's not human.
Yeah.
In other words, we're digressing here for a few minutes, but I want to digress. When people talk in terms of, oh, the written Torah, okay, but all this oral Torah stuff from the rabbis, I mean, it's like, have you ever actually studied the stuff from the rabbis? Because the stuff written of the rabbis that you're referring to, each one of these rabbis was superhuman. I say this all the time. There have been brilliant people in the non-Jewish world, many brilliant people, many brilliant philosophers, many brilliant scholars, etc., etc., etc. There is nothing in the non-Jewish world that comes close to
The calendar.
It comes close. Let's go all modern times. Comes close to the Gaon of Vilna, the Chafetz Chaim, Moshe Feinstein. There's nothing in the Goyish world in history that comes close to any one of these people. Let alone the authors of the Mishnah, Tanoim, Amoraim, please, Rambam, Rashi. Are you crazy? There's nothing in the Goyish world that comes close to these people's scholarship. Now, the point being, so if you're dumb, then you say, see, I told you how smart Jews were. But if you have any intellect, you say to yourself, no, this is not about you. It's beyond human intellect to have been able to become the Rambam. It's beyond human intellect to have been able to become Rashi, to have been able to come to Tanoim, the Amoraim. It's not human. The Bet Yosef.
What do you mean? What are you pointing to? Because we were talking about.
I'm talking about these people.
There we understand.
These people had knowledge, just the volume of knowledge that they had on the tip of their tongue. The average person today doesn't remember his own phone number. Okay? The sheer quantity of knowledge. In order to write the Bet Yosef, you literally, just the Bet Yosef, we'll take one, and the Rambam for sure, you literally have to have the entire Talmud at the tip of your tongue to be able to write such a work. That's not human. That's not human.
How would you consider Einstein's secular knowledge?
Yeah, he was pretty good. Einstein was pretty good, but still. I mean, I didn't test him, so I don't know. But the story they tell about Einstein when I was taking a time management course once. So the story they told there about Einstein was that he was in the middle of a meeting for the Manhattan Project, and he had these big scientists that came to visit him. And at the end of the meeting, whether or not the story is true, I don't know, but this is the story they tell. At the end of the story, there had to be some follow-up to the meeting. So one of the professors said to him, Dr. Einstein, what's your phone number? He said, I can call you. So he went and he got the Manhattan White Pages. You know, everyone was a famous phone book. I mean, today it doesn't exist. Manhattan White Pages. And he went and looked up his own phone number and he told the guy his phone number. I said, Dr. Einstein, you don't know your own phone number? He said, don't waste precious brain space on information that's easily retrieved. Now, if we're going to ready Fabring a little bit, you can't say Lahavdil because Einstein was a Yid. But there's a story that Tzemach Tzedek, that the Rebbe Marash, who was the fourth leader of Chabad, when he was a young man, he was studying Gemara with a Chavrusa. And they came upon a passage in the Gemara that was, they couldn't get through it. Now, believe me, when I can't get through a piece of Gemara, it's because I need the art scroll to help me, okay? That's not what we're talking about. That wasn't the kind of couldn't get through it. This is two gigantic Torah scholars that are trying to get through a piece of Gemara, and they couldn't see their way clear. While they were sitting and poring over it and trying to understand it, the Tzemach Tzedek, that Marash's father, happened to walk past. He saw them engrossed, so he realized they must be challenged. So he leaned over his son's shoulder to see what Gemara they were learning. And before they even told him what the problem was, he launched into, the Tzemach Tzedek launched into a clear and succinct explanation of the Gemara to their absolute delight. All their problems they had with the Gemara, now clarified. Tzemach Tzedek, boom, boom. When the Tzemach Tzedek saw they were satisfied, before he walked away, he paused and he said, I haven't actually thought about this piece of Gemara in 30 years. And then he walked away. The Rebbe Marash said afterwards, you think that my father's greatness is that here are two relatively accomplished Torah scholars sitting and studying the Gemara, and along comes a Gaon, who's such a great sage that even though he hasn't thought about this Gemara in 30 years, he's able to explain it to them. Even though they're totally immersed in it, they can't understand it. But no, he comes and he says, 30 years I haven't thought about this piece of Gemara, and he's able to explain it. You think that's the greatness of my father? The Rebbe Marash said, no, not at all. Because there are many Geonim that are able to do that. That's what he said. There were many Geonim that could have done that. He said, you want to know what makes my father great? The Rebbe Marash said, what makes my father great is that he remembers every thought he had for the last 30 years. So he can pinpoint exactly when the last time he thought about this Gemara was. That's greatness, he said. That's greatness. Chaim. Now to the Parsha. Okay. Chukat Balak. That's what the Torah portion is called this week. And the Rebbe always talks about when you have two parshiot combined, then by divine providence, this is now the name of the two the Torah portion this week. It's not this Chukas and this Balak. This week it's called Chukas Balak. That's the name of this week's Torah portion. And if you need proof of that, is that when we read the Torah portion on Shabbat, we're not going to finish Chukas, stop, and then start Balak. No, the fourth person called to the Torah is going to read the end of Chukas and the beginning of Balak, connecting the two Torah portions in one aliyah, and one person being called to the Torah. So that means that we've now set it up to be one big Torah portion. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, this is the strangest, or maybe the most succinct name. What kind of a name is Chukas Balak? And let's digress for a moment so that we know what we're talking about, even though some of the 100 people that are here tonight already know the meaning, but for our tens of thousands of fans online, we have to explain what we're saying. Okay? So Chukas is statutes. That's a reference to the mitzvot of the Torah, for which we have the Torah, the mitzvot, the commandments in the Torah divided into three types. Mishpatim are the civil laws that any civilized society would understand and would follow. And in fact, most civilized and moral societies base their foundation and their morality and their laws on those civil laws in the Torah. Okay. The next level up, and so therefore it's mitzvahs that every person could understand, should be able to understand. The next level up is what we call edot, or testimonials. Testimonials are mitzvahs that I like to say that we can understand the mitzvah, but not the details of the mitzvah. I'll give you an example. Testimonial, matzah on Passover. That's a testimonial. We're remembering the Exodus from Egypt, right? Okay. The idea that you would remember the Exodus from Egypt is a good idea. Next week, Lahavdla, I guess you could say, we're celebrating 250 years of the United States' independence. And I'm actually thinking of decorating the Chabad house with American flags. I'm a big patriot. I'm planning on doing it. Yeah, just have to figure out how to do it. Everybody else doing it, well, no reason why not to. It's 250 years we should celebrate. Okay? Show our patriotism. Fine. Right? So the idea that you should be celebrating 250 years of the United States' independence, hey, anybody can understand that. That's reasonable. And therefore, lahavdil, the idea that we should be celebrating the Exodus from Egypt, which set us in motion as a nation, I get that. But let me ask you a question. The only way to celebrate that is to actually go to every nook and cranny in my house and I have to find every tiny crumb like I'm sugar. So the idea makes sense in Edot. The details, some of the details, might be supra-rational in Edot. Okay. The third level is Chukim. These are mitzvot which Hashem says clearly, and Rashi, right at the beginning of today's Torah portion, uses those words. Chukah chakakti, I have made this as a decree, gzera gazarti, I'm putting this upon you. And the Rebbe has very long discussions about those words. You're not even allowed to think about it. Don't even think about it. This is mitzvahs. And what goes into those mitzvahs? The classics that you would know about is keeping kosher is one of them. Keeping all our kosher laws, our chukim.
What do you mean we're not allowed to think about it? We gotta think about this.
Again, that's a good question. The Rebbe addresses that word from the Medrash. The question is, why Rashi is quoting a Medrash. He's not making this line up. When he says, Gezerah himel fanai, this is a decree from before me. You do not have the right to, okay, let me retranslate the word lahar, to question it. These are mitzvahs you can't question. Like I said, kosher is one of them. Shatnez is a chukah. And of course, the one we're talking about here, Para Aduma, the red heifer. By the way, and this is a very important statement on social issues, forbidden relationships are a chukah. All our biblically forbidden relationships are chukah. So, and therefore, and just if we're going to go down that path, therefore, when someone presents the argument two consenting adults is a logical argument. The prohibition against our forbidden relationships is supra-rational. So notwithstanding the reasonable, rational argument, which is two consenting adults, 100% reasonable, 100% rational, it doesn't make a difference because the prohibitions of these relationships are not rational. So your rational argument has no place. It's a Torah, Hashem said so.
But some of them you can make sense of too.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can have some reasons.
so it's important to note, yeah, that throughout history we have attached reasons to even the mitzvot that are chukim, but those reasons are a reason, never the reason. Got it? Okay. Yes. Okay. So that's what chukah means, and that's chukat. Zot chukat HaTorah, the first half of the name of this week's Torah portion. Second half of the name of this week's Torah portion is Balak. Who was Balak? Not even Bilam, but actually Balak. Balak was the king of Moab. Now, here's an interesting thing about the Moabites. The Moabites were not even on our agenda. It's very important to know that from a historical perspective, especially if we're going to talk about July 4th in this time, this week. Yeah, this is just like it's 250 years of the United States, it's also 50 years since Entebbe. Because Entebbe happened on July 4th, 1976, at the bicentennial. That was the date of the Entebbe rescue, the Entebbe miracle. Okay? And the reason I'm mentioning that here is because by and large, not by and large, absolutely 100% of the time, we've been dragged into wars we didn't ask for. We conquer Sichon and Og because they're in what today would call itself Jordan. But we actually just said, we just want to get through. And Sichon and Og wouldn't let us pass. So we had no choice, but they went to war against us. We had no choice, so we conquered them. And that became the annex, Reuven and Gad, which we'll talk about when we come to that Torah portion. That became the annex. We didn't want it. You went to war against us. We won. Have a nice day. Okay?
So Moab was not even on our path.
Moab was not part. There's the 7 nations and the 3 nations. We're supposed to conquer, and Chassidus talks about this at such great length because the 7 nations correspond to the 7 emotions. The 7 emotions are things that you can actually conquer. The intellect is really only a gift that comes when Mashiach comes. And that's the V'chiach Hashem Lekechas Gulcha, when Hashem will expand our territory and will conquer the 3 additional nations for a total of 10. But that means, because when Mashiach comes, we will also conquer the 3 intellect attributes, intellectual attributes.
Those the 3.
What are the 3?
The annexed territory?
Ammon? No, we didn't annex those yet.
The Sichon and Og is which part?
Sichon is something else. They're not part. That's right. They're not even part of the 7 nations.
Okay, so
They're not even part of the 3 either. They're nothing. They just got in the way.
So the 7 are the Israel proper.
Right, the Canaanites. Chiti, Amori, Yevusi, Prizi, Knani. I knew I wasn't going to name all 7.
The 3 that
The 3 that we don't conquer are Ammon. It says the Torah describes them as Keni, Knizi, Kadmoni. Those are the three.
Where are they located?
Who are they? They are Ammon, Moab, Edom.
Where are they located?
Edom, southeast. Right? In today's Torah portion, we go around them.
Okay. And
We
Moab?
first ask
Where
them.
is Moab?
Ammon and Moab are northeast. Probably Syria today? Like there.
Okay.
Syria, maybe a small part of Jordan.
So that will come later. The conquering of those will come later.
Yes, that comes with Mashiach.
Okay.
And the spiritual conquering is also part of the messianic process, conquering your intellect. And of course, we say that that's what Chabad Chassidus came to do. Chabad Chassidus came to empower us to be able to conquer the intellect, to be able to bring Mashiach, so we can conquer the three additional nations. Okay. Okay, so here's the thing about Balak. Balak goes to such great length to drag in Bilam, who's a Midianite. Technically, the Midianites are also not on our agenda. Because of what happens in this week's Torah portion, they become on our agenda. And Hashem tells Moshe, Nikayim nikmas Hashem b'Midyan. Hashem says, you're going to take vengeance upon Midian. But Midian wasn't on our agenda.
How do they get involved?
Because Balak, the king of Moab, tries to hire Bilam, who's from Midian,
Okay. To curse you.
all in the second half of today's Torah portion, to curse the Jews.
Curse the Jews.
So, what's Balak's beef? So, if we're going to think about this, and the way we just described it, and this explains what the name Chukat Balak really refers to. If Balak is the intellect, he's Moab, he's one of the three intellectual components, right? That is to be conquered later. The truth is that the intellect is where the real war takes place. Let me explain. We have two souls, the godly soul and the animal soul. The godly soul and the animal soul are mirror images of each other. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. What's a mirror image? A mirror image is an identical image, just backwards. So what do we mean by backwards? Follow that? The mirror image is the same thing, it's just backwards. Although when I look in the mirror, I see somebody completely different. I don't know who that guy is I see in the mirror. He has a white beard, and he's still overweight and kind of bald, and I know that that's not me in any level whatsoever. But that's not for tonight. That's for between me and my therapist. But then, okay.
Handsome guy.
What?
Handsome guy.
I'm a handsome guy. Thank you. Thank you. Validation. Just krijg je de validation. Okay. So here's what happens. The animal soul and the godly soul both have intellectual components, and they both have emotional components. But as mirror images, the godly soul is primarily intellect, and emotion is an outgrowth of the intellect. The Alter Rebbe gives the process very simply in Tanya. He says, you use your intellect to meditate on the awesomeness of Hashem. And when you come to realize that Hashem, who's not just infinite, Hashem is beyond the infinite. Infinite is the best word we can come up with. But even the word infinite is limiting to Hashem. So that's b'chal, not a good description. Right? Even to describe Hashem as infinite is limiting Hashem. Hashem is beyond infinite. Infinite is, it's just the best word we can come up with. We can't come up with a better word because we're finite. So the best word we can come up with is infinite. And yet, Hashem, who's beyond the description of infinite, has a personal relationship with me and you.
Is the vastness of the universe a reflection of his infiniteness?
All of that has a personal relationship with me and you. So when you meditate on that, the Alter Rebbe says, when you think about that, yeah, if you thought in terms of who knows? Lahavdil elef alfei v'ribirivavos havdalas. The president of the United States, the governor of California, some famous actor, et cetera, right? And that guy chose to have a relationship with you. You'd be awestruck. Whoever your superhero is, you'd be awestruck by it, right? So if that's the way you would be about a boss of a dom, someone of flesh and blood, he's so awe-inspiring. If you took a moment to meditate on how Hashem is so far beyond us, that even the term infinite is a limitation on how we describe Hashem, and yet Hashem chooses to have a relationship with me and you should be awe-inspired by that. Wow. So that should awaken within you a love and awe, which are the two primary emotions, and the others extend from that. Love and awe. That's the way the godly soul processes, says the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. Starts with an intellectual realization, and the intellectual realization spawns, almost in a compelled way, an emotional outburst. The animal soul, as a mirror image, operates exactly the opposite. The animal soul starts with emotional impulse. It's all about emotional impulse. And the entire advertising industry knows that. That's why they spend tens of millions of dollars for product placement. You have a movie, they'll pump, I don't even know how much money in, that if there's a restaurant scene in the movie, that the two people in the restaurant should order a Coke or a Diet Coke. Coca-Cola will spend tens of thousands of dollars because it's worth it for them. Billboards on a freeway that you only get to see for a split second or a second. They'll pay for that. Why? Because they're counting on the emotional impulse that will happen almost subconsciously. Forget about consciously. Will happen completely subconsciously, and they're expecting you to buy Coke.
Subliminal message.
Subliminal messaging. And it works. And it works. So the animal soul starts with an emotional impulse, the opposite of the godly soul that starts with an intellectual realization. But then the animal soul, because you're not really an animal, it's a human animal soul. Because an animal soul doesn't need any rationalization. But the human animal soul needs a rationalization. So the impulse screams, I want, and insists that the intellectual component of the animal soul translate the I want into I need. Okay, so here's the battleground, because every one of us has a godly soul and an animal soul. Here's the battleground. The battleground actually takes place, and later on in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe actually makes reference to a third soul, which he calls the intellectual soul, the Nefesh HaSichlis. But the Nefesh HaSichlis is not really an intellect, a separate soul. The Nefesh HaSichlis is actually the intellectual component of the animal soul. And that's where the battleground takes place. Imagine, to simplify so you understand how this works, that every one of us knows it, okay? A kid comes running into his dad, screaming, I
Want.
He starts off with, I want,
I need.
but he quickly goes to I need.
Yeah.
Okay. Because he realizes that I want isn't going to work. So he quickly goes to I need. What does dad say?
No, you won't.
Finish the sentence. No, you don't really need it. Now, is that just a mean guy? No. You probably don't need it. You probably don't need it. And here comes the battle. The child is screaming from his animal soul, I want it, and therefore he's screaming, I need. Who's he screaming, I need at? Who's the animal soul screaming, I need at? The intellectual component of the animal soul. He's saying, you're part of me, you're my intellect, and so therefore you need to come up with a rationalization for my I want. You following me? The godly soul now says to the intellect of the animal soul, I'm primarily intellect and you are intellect. Can we talk like adults here? Let's discuss this like grown-ups. Let's discuss this intelligently, rationally, without emotions. Let's be honest, you don't need this. You want it. Is that cool? I'm paraphrasing only slightly because the Alter Rebbe pretty much says this explicitly in Tanya. And that's the battle every one of us goes through every single day, all day long.
So what in terms of
And what are we fighting over? What's the two souls that are battling in chapter 9 of Tanya? The Alter Rebbe begins with that this is like a battle going on. Two warring factions fighting over control of a city. That's the allegory or metaphor that the Alter Rebbe employs in chapter 9 of Tanya. What's the city they're fighting over? So the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, he says the guf, they're fighting over control of the body. But in chapter 9, but in truth, it's not really the body because the body is just a piece of meat. They have to be fighting over what animates the body. So they're fighting over really control, what they're really fighting over, because our operative soul is our animal soul, not our godly soul. So the godly soul and the animal soul are really fighting over control of the intellectual component of the animal soul. And the godly soul is saying, no, you don't need this. You need to do what Hashem wants. That's what you need. You need to do what Hashem wants. The animal soul is screaming, ah! Really, basically. It's the animal soul screaming the whole time. Okay.
is this war about between sin and not sin, or more than that?
In one aspect, yes. Yeah. The Alter Rebbe says that's the Beinani. The Beinani, as described in Tanya, the Sefer Shel Beinani, the intermediate person, is the guy who's constantly embroiled in this struggle. And that once he recognizes what the struggle is and where the battlegrounds are, now he can approach it. Okay. What is almost so what is the thing? We'll go back to the kids, yeah? What sends the impetuous kid completely off the Richter scale? When the parent says what? No, not just no. What else does the parent have to say to really send the kid off the Richter scale? The follow-up to no is usually no. What's the initial response to no? What does the kid say?
I really do need it.
Well, there you go. You. It's been a while since you were a kid. He was a kid more recently than you were. Can hear that? It seems that way.
I'm ready for that.
It seems that way. He was a kid more recently, right? The next thing out of the kid's mouth is, but why? Right? Isn't it? That's the next thing out of the kid's mouth. What does a dad say when he realizes there's no way he's going to? What does he say? What does he say? He says the three words that send the kids off the deep end. What does he say? I said so. Nothing sends the kid off the deep end more than I said so. I have Baruch Hashem, in good health till Mea Ve'esrim and beyond. Revelation of Melech HaMashiach. I have Baruch Hashem 40 years of watching kids go off the deep end. When I say I said so. Finished. Okay? Lest anybody think, oh, the rabbi's kids, hoo-ha. Lest anything, my kids are kids like everybody else's kids. I'm a kid like everybody else's kids. Forget about my kids. Okay. Right? So am I right? Nothing sends the kid off the Richter scale more than I said so. Nothing. There's nothing that sends the kids into a whole thing, right? That worse than I said so. So if you think about it, when the animal soul is trying to engage and take control of the intellectual component of the animal soul, which is where the battleground is taking place, right? When he tries to take control, there's nothing that gets in his way more or gets in his craw more than I said so. What sends Balak off the deep end? That he's willing to make peace with his arch enemy. The Midianites and the Moabites were arch enemies. And tell me history doesn't just repeat itself, right? Yemach Shemam v'zichram. The Shiites and the Sunnis, Yemach Shemam, both of them. Yeah, I said it. Yemach Shemam v'zichram, all of them, right? The Shiites and the Sunnis, the one thing they both agree on? Anti-Semitism. The far, far, far left in this country and the far, far, far right, given the opportunity, they would literally be, what we say in Yiddish, afmessers. They would be at each other with knives. Knives out, at each other. What do they both agree on? Anti-Semitism. That's where they both sign up. That's where they both agree. Why? Because of Chukat. They can't stand the fact that we're comfortable with the idea that Hashem gave us mitzvahs. We do them with zeal and gusto, even though they make no sense. And we do them because Hashem said so. The average Yid, Nebuch, Lahavdil, from a guy who has fallen in with his animal soul, right? Goes completely bananas over kashrut. Keeping kosher drives him nuts. Drives him nuts. He tries to be kosher style, whatever that means. Why? Because he can't take the idea of chukah. I've told the story before. I don't know if I told it in this class, but I've definitely told it before that many, many years ago, I spoke to a bunch of 8th graders. I have nothing against the kids at Stephen S. Wise. I was brought in show and tell, the anomaly. He's not from Central Casting. He's actually real. With the beard is real. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole conversation. Yeah. It was a fascinating conversation. But at one point, so I explained to them, I took them down a path where Torah Sinai, believing that the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, is a cutoff line. If you believe the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, it actually was a revelation at Mount Sinai, then Judaism is Judaism. If you don't believe there was a revelation at Mount Sinai, then it's basically a joke. I don't know why would you participate in it at all? Why identify as a Jew? They got the idea. They didn't necessarily agree, but the kids got the idea. So one of the kids raises his hand, Q&A, raises his hand. He said, I know you're going to say there's no way for me to disprove your faith. I got that already. But just go with me for a minute in the course of the conversation. I said, okay. He said, if I'm adding the word chas v'shalom, he didn't say chas v'shalom, but if chas v'shalom, someone could actually prove to you somehow, that the Torah chas v'shalom, that there was no revelation in Mount Sinai, what would you do? He said. I said, oh, me? He said, yeah. I said, I'm going straight to McDonald's. The teacher was rolling on the floor. He was laughing so hard. And I said, I'm going straight to McDonald's. And I said, not because I'm so plotzing, I desperately want a Big Mac. No, that's not why. I'm going to McDonald's. I need to know what's the big deal. Why does everybody make such a big deal out of this thing? So I want to have one just to know what's the big deal. What's the big deal of it? Not that I really want one. I just want to know what the big deal is. So if he proves it to me, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to McDonald's. The kid who asked the question stared at me like I had literally just said, I'm going to the moon. The look on his face was somewhere between confusion, shock, and horror. Now, because I'm good at picking up people's vibes, I knew exactly where this was going, and I made believe I didn't, so we could go down the path. I said, why are you looking at me like that? Why are you you have a problem with me having a Big Mac? Yeah. Why does it bother you? What's the problem? The kid couldn't get the words out of his mouth. He couldn't get the words out. You know what he said, right? What do you think he said?
To what?
What did he say? Why was he so shocked and horrified? You're sure? Why was he so shocked and horrified?
The image of you eating a Big Mac.
The exact opposite. He finally got the words out of his mouth. He said, you've never had a Big Mac? You've never had a Big Mac? Guess what the kid said? I'm telling you, the teacher was choking. He was holding his side. So the guy that brought me in, the teacher was somewhat traditional. That's why he wanted me to come speak to the kids so that they'd see what real Judaism at least looks like, okay? The kid, and there were other kids in the class that were just as horrified. You've never had a Big Mac? I said, no, never had one. Nope. And they were like, wow, how is that possible? They were in shock. How's that possible? Don't you want to try just one, just once? This is a true conversation, the conversation I had with them.
Jewish kids shocked.
I think most of the kids there were Jews. I'm pretty sure. Oh, but we're not going to get into that.
Okay.
So I said to him, I asked, by raise of hands in the class, this is a very, very long time ago. These people are all parents, I'm sure, today. Okay? I said, by raise of hands, how many of you have done the DARE program? That was very big then. You remember this? DARE, it was Nancy Reagan's against drugs, teaching kids. It was an anti-drug thing. She had a whole curriculum that she spearheaded that became part of the curriculum. And I think a lot of public schools are still teaching it. Anyway, how many of you took the DARE program? They all raised their hands. All raised their hands. They all took it. I said, in the DARE program, you remember the slogan, Nancy Reagan's slogan?
Just say no.
Just say no, right? That was the slogan of the DARE program, just say no. So I said, in the DARE program, were you taught just say no, but try it once? No. You were taught just say no, never take drugs, right? See, he saw where I was going with that. So the kid went, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, what do you mean? Drugs will kill you. Big Mac's not, well, we can get into whether or not a Big Mac will kill you. Ask Robert F. Kennedy, he'll tell you differently. But we're not going to talk about that, okay? Drugs will kill you. I said, herein lies our difference of opinion. You're worried about killing your body, and I'm worried about killing your soul. And And I'm telling you, when you eat non-kosher, you're doing as much damage to your soul as drugs do to your body if you take drugs. That's the way I see it, because I believe the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. The kids got it. I mean, I don't know if I would changed anyone's life that night, but the kids got the idea of what I was saying. Okay? So my point being in telling you the story, the reason I'm telling you the story is because think about that, right? There is nothing that, just like the kid whose parent tells him, I said so, goes absolutely bananas off the Richter scale. When you tell anyone, a yid or a goy, this is a decree. I said so. Hashem said so. And you don't have permission to question this one. So the Nefesh Habamis goes bananas from that. Because the Nefesh Habamis is an impetuous child. Where does the Nefesh Habamis express, where does the animal soul bring out this incredible impetuousness? He starts to scream at what? The intellectual soul. Don't let him get away with this. What do you mean I said so? This is supposed to be the Torah. Torah is supposed to be intelligent. What do you mean I said so? Don't let him get away with this. And the intellectual component of the animal soul says, you're right. Even though this isn't my fight, I got to get into it. Even though this isn't my battle, I have no choice but to insert myself in it. So what ultimately sets Balak as the representative of Moab, one of the three intellectual components that we need to conquer in order to be able to bring Mashiach? What sets Balak off? Chukas. Chukas is what gets him going. Chukas is what makes him hire Bilam and make peace with his own arch enemy, because he sees Yidden doing mitzvahs that are chukim. And not just any chukim, the ultimate chukah, the Parah Adumah. Shlomo HaMelech refers to it as the ultimate of chukah. Zot chukat HaTorah, the Torah says. This one is the true chukah of the Torah.
So the Bnei Israel were not even in the vicinity of the Midian and Moab.
They could bypass. We bypass.
Was there any threat that
No, they were not threatened.
Just completely.
They knew enough to know that they're not really threatened. Sichon and Og Rashi says. So Rashi says Sichon and Og had spent the last 40 years collecting taxes from everybody on the basis that they were going to block us from getting into the land of Canaan. So they had no choice but to go to war with us.
Why was that? Was also.
But I'm just saying.
Reason. What was the reason for that? Also, there was just like they could have let us go through.
Well, the 7 nations of Canaan knew we were coming to get them,
right?
So they were paying protection.
Okay. But
on a practical level.
That's Moab and Midian.
Moab and Midian had nothing to have until they stuck their noses into the picture. Yeah. In fact, fast forward, because Ammon and Moab are cousins, you know that, right? They're the descendants of Lot's two daughters. No, they're the descendants of Lot's their first cousins. They're the children of Lot's daughters, the result of the incestuous relationship with their father, with Lot, after Sodom is destroyed. So Ammon and Moab are cousins. Fast forward, it's the Haftorah even, right? Is it here? No. Is it the Haftorah of Chukas? Yeah, it's this one, right? Yeah, Yiftach. Yiftach HaGiladi. Right. It's the Haftorah of Chukas. We're not going to read it because we read Chukas Balak together, but that's the story of Yiftach. The ultimate, I always talk about it when we do read that Haftorah, and this is exactly, if the Israeli government wants to know how they're supposed to talk, all they need to do is read the Haftorah of Chukas and then quote it verbatim. Just quote it verbatim. Because that's what Yiftach says. The Ammonites now come and say, you took our land, that land east of the Jordan.
Wait, how did the Ammonites get into this picture?
The Ammon and Moab are cousins.
Yes,
They're basically interchangeable.
Okay.
Okay. So much later down the line, in the times of the judges, the Ammonites go to war against Reuven and Gad, who are living east of the Jordan, and half of Manasseh.
Because Sichon took
And they claim, right, and they say, you're on our land. This guy Yiftach, who's the leader, who becomes the leader, and a warrior, the first thing he tells them is, wait a second, why are you here? We did not take your land. Sichon and Og took your land, and we took it from Sichon and Og. This is not, don't look at us. Don't look at us. We had nothing to do with it. Sichon and Og conquered your land, and then they got in our way, and they went to war against us, and now it's our land. Don't tell me it's your land.
And that's related to Moab and Midian. How?
So Ammon and Moab is the same thing. They're one and the same.
Okay.
So I'm saying, same thing. We had nothing to do with you.
Okay, gotcha.
We didn't go for your land. We didn't attack you. Go home. Leave us alone. And they, of course, say, no, United Nations, colonialism, apartheid, genocide. And Yiftach says, you want to see what genocide looks like? Okay, I'm going to show you genocide. Go ahead, let's go. Let's go. Enough talking. Let's go. And Yiftach conquers them. That's the Haftorah of Chukas. Look it up in the Book of Judges.
This happens when exactly then?
This is like 100 some odd years after Joshua.
100 years after Canaan is
Right.
already
We're settled.
settled?
Yeah.
These two come against.
Yeah.
Okay.
another question.
Yeah.
If Hashem forbids us from marrying into Ammon and Moab, then why does Hashem want Mashiach to come from Lot? Why does Hashem want Mashiach to come from Lot in the first place?
Because, okay.
Maybe we can do that at the end. But
Yeah, you just set off another 30 minutes.
Let's finish first, and then we can answer that.
So the bottom line, because
You have to repeat the question.
the repetition is that ultimately Ruth, right? Ruth is the grandmother of King David, which means that she is the grandmother of the Davidic dynasty, which means she's the grandmother of Moshiach, because Moshiach is from the Davidic dynasty. Ruth was a Moabite. She was a Moabite convert. But the Torah prohibits Moabites from converting to Judaism, but we learn it actually from this story explicitly, but the sages already knew it at that point, that the prohibition is against Moabite men, not against Moabite women.
Okay.
And that's why Ruth is able to convert to Judaism. But the goal is to be able to take the lowest sparks and elevate them. Mashiach has to be represented by that. So here's the bottom line. Here's the message for tonight. The message for tonight is really a very simple and direct one. If you want to know what the antidote to Balak is, recognize what sends Balak off the deep end. It's called Chukas. And because of that, and so therefore, the ultimate vanquishing of Moab, and as we said at the beginning, which really in a symbolic way, we're talking about conquering and being able to bring about the revelation of Mashiach, is when we behave in a manner that's called chukas. Of course, the easy way to understand that is we observe specifically the mitzvahs that are in the category of chukim. But it's not only that, Because even the mitzvot that are not in the category of chukim, every single mitzvah has all three types in it. So even if a mitzvah is classified in the classification of chukim, a decree, there's still a mishpatim aspect to it. There's even an edut aspect to it. And the same thing on the other end of the spectrum. The mishpatim mitzvot, the civil laws that we have, there's the civil law aspect to it, there's the testimonial aspect to it, and there's even the chukah aspect to it. Even in our civil laws.
Reasons that we don't even know.
Right. And you could argue that even within our civil laws, there are certainly aspects of our civil laws that are supra-rational. We're learning in our class on Shabbos, the Gemara, we're learning Makot, Mesechet Makot, which is a very, very, very logical tractate of the Talmud. Very logical tractate in the Talmud. But Mesechtes Makos starts off with the laws of Eidim Zomimim, which I don't want to go into, but Eidim Zomimim ultimately is illogical. We're disqualifying one set of witnesses based on a testimony of another set of witnesses, when from a logical standpoint, we have no reason to believe one was said over the other. But the Torah says we're going to believe this set and not that set. So even there's an illogical part to it. Super rational.
So what is the antidote?
So therefore, the antidote to Balak is to start to do mitzvahs chukim, meaning pick a mitzvah in your life that either you're not doing as well as you could or should, simply because rationally you've come to the decision, this is not for me. It's not some, maybe for the rabbi, not for me. I'm okay doing.
I don't get this one.
Huh? I don't get this one. Or even if I do get it a little bit, but not to such an extent. Not to such an extent. Okay? And if you're going to make that argument, so tonight's the night that you need to know that your opportunity and your message from this week's Parsha is Chukat Balak. Conquer Balak by doing the mitzvah that you're not doing supra-rationally, and start to do it supra-rationally, because I said so. That's how we bring Mashiach. Chaim.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Very good.
Okay. Good night, everybody.